Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be creating a very clean and simple card project. Well, this card is inspired by a project that Neenah Marie Trapani created for the Says Stamp Sending Love virtual class event, which was conducted a few days back. Well, she created a tag for her class. I did not have the supplies to create the tag, so I ended up creating a card instead. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let us first take a look at the stamp set that we will be using to create our very beautiful, clean and simple card. Now, this is a love letter stamp. This was part of the To Love release by Says Stamp, a beautiful love theme set featuring bold love and hugs sentiment. This also includes some beautiful little hearts and post-its theme stamps. There are a couple of sentiments which could be stamped in one of those envelopes as well. For my colors, I decided to use my Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks in the shade Tropic, Cherry, and Carnation. Well, I ended up using just Tropic and Cherry, but if you want a subtle pink tone on your card fronts, you could go with Carnation instead. I will start by stamping this strip from the stamp set onto an A2 size card panel. We will be trimming this card panel to a lot smaller than an A2 size card base. So, well, I just had to make sure that the strip was aligned properly. In order to make sure that the strip was straight, I lined it up using my T-square ruler. I used the cherry ink on the strip and I love how beautiful, bright and vibrant this color is. Now, I did stamp this a couple of times just to make sure that I had an even coverage of color on the stamped image. Well, this stamp does come with coordinating dies. I wanted to stamp it directly onto my card base, but if you want to assemble all of these as die cut pieces on your card base, you could do that using the coordinating dies. Or, well, these images are fairly simple enough to fuzzy cut using a pair of scissors. Next, we will bring our postage stamp. Now, I will line this up next to our striped border. At this point, I did bring out one of the smaller A2 size nesting dies by Spellbinders. I just wanted to make sure that there's enough space for all of these stamped images to be nestled perfectly into my die cut panel. Once I was satisfied with the position, I did make sure that the postage stamp was properly aligned using my T-square ruler. I then stamped this image twice using Tropic ink to make sure that I got a deep color and perfect impression. Next, we will be stamping the cancellation mark, which is something that you would see on your cards and envelopes. Well, sorry, my head gets in the way here. I just wanted to make sure that the image was also well within the space that we will be die cutting using the A2 size rectangle die. I stamped this image using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I love how beautiful the pink, green, and the black complement each other. Now we can remove this main panel and stamp our little envelope with the sentiment onto a scrap piece of white cardstock since we will be cutting out this image. Now, if you want to have a single layer card, you could stamp this directly onto the same panel, but I wanted a little extra dimension on my card front. So I decided to use this envelope as the focal point of my card project and pop it up using some tiny foam tape. Well, for this one, I used my Memento black ink instead of my VersaFine Onyx black ink. That is because we will be doing some ink blending using the same Tropic ink. You could definitely use your alcohol markers to color the envelope, but I decided to use the same Tropic ink that I used for the postage stamp and ink blended on this envelope, bringing in a gradient effect, wherein I started with a darker shade from the edges and bringing it towards the center. So you'll see that my center is lighter as compared to the edges of the envelope. I use some post-it tapes to mask the edges, making sure that my ink blending does not go beyond the stamped image. Now, you could definitely use your masking tapes for this, but I couldn't find any of those on my table while I was crafting, so I ended up using these sticky notes, which worked absolutely fine. Make sure not to forget the tip of the envelope while you're coloring or ink blending. Now, once I was satisfied with all of that ink blending, I carefully removed the sticky notes and placed the strip back into my stamping tool where we will go ahead and stamp our sentiment. I stamped the paper hug sentiment using VersaFine Onyx Black ink inside that little card popping out of our envelope. This fits perfectly in that space. I then stamped one of those little hearts, which was again part of the stamp set, using cherry ink on the base of our envelope. I thought this added a perfect touch to our envelope. You could also add some die cut hearts there, but I preferred stamping and I think this looks absolutely amazing. Well, once I was done with all of the stamping and ink blending, now I use my pair of scissors and fussy cut out this image. Well, I generally don't prefer fussy cutting. I'm not very good at it, but this image was pretty simple. It was just straight lines which made my work a lot more easier. If I don't have coordinating dies, I prefer to cut my images using my brother's Canon cut machine. Now that all of our components are ready, we can assemble our card front. Before I adhere my focal point, I decided to die cut this panel using the rectangle die, which makes this panel slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. Now I took my panel back to my stamping tool and stamped the little heart with the arrow below the postage stamp and adjacent to the envelope focal point. I love how beautifully this image is nestled between the stamped image and the die cut focal point. Using foam tape, I adhered the panel onto an A2 size card base that I cut out using KRAFT cardstock. I love that big border around my card front panel. Now, using some thin foam squares, which has very less dimension as compared to the foam tape that I used for my card front, I adhered the focal point image right between the striped image and the postage stamp. Well, I love how beautiful this turned out. Now, I thought that this would be it. We wouldn't add any shine or sparkle, but even a clean and simple card needs some shine and sparkle. So I used my Spectrum Noir brush pen to add some shine on just our focal point image. I love how this card turned out. You can use so many different color combinations and recreate this project. This would be perfect for your Valentine's Day cards or any occasion where you want to send a little paper hug to your loved ones. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video and would definitely try something similar. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be linked down in the description box below. Note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.